Welcome to Java tutorials. My name is Kishore. In our last video, we discussed about how to create a class and an object. In this video, we will discuss how to avoid writing these initialization statements every time you create the object. But why we need to avoid these initialization statements means I am creating an object, but every time I create an object, I write three extra lines to initialize these properties. Why three extra lines I am writing is in customer class, if you notice, there are three properties which are not initialized. Once I create an object, it is going to be initialized with the default values. The second customer object also is doing the same thing. Once it is created, it will be initialized with the default values, so that the properties you need to explicitly initialize with those three lines. But what you need to understand is every time you create an object, you are writing some statements to initialize. If there are five properties, you will write five extra lines just for initialization. Means if I have 10 objects, 10 into 5, 50 lines of code you just write for initialization. For that reason, you need to avoid initializing the variables like this. So how to initialize is you need to make use of constructor. So what is a constructor? Constructor is similar to a method, but its name will be same as the class name and it will not have any return type. In customer class, if you observe, there are three variables and one method. Display method has a return type void. How many members are there inside the customer class if you ask? There are three variables and one method, so totally four members. Is there anything else present in the customer class? Means yes, there is one default constructor which is present in the customer class. What is that default constructor means? Whenever a class doesn't have a constructor, automatically compiler creates the default constructor. How does the default constructor look like is class name, which is customer, then parenthesis, opening and closing flower bracket, and inside this opening and closing flower bracket, it is going to initialize the properties with the default values. This customer is already present inside the customer class. What is the proof that the default constructor is present in the customer class is this is the proof you are able to invoke that constructor. But I can explicitly write that constructor to understand how it is getting executed. Let me write that default constructor like this. I will write public customer and I write system.out.println statement with customer message. Notice I have used public keyword, which is actually not necessary for this program, but writing public makes the code to access the customer constructor anywhere in the program. What happens once I write this default constructor is when I run this program, let us see the output. Observe it is printing this customer constructor. Why it is printing is when I create an object, this customer constructor is invoked. I am creating object twice. Because of that, the control runs this customer constructor, printing the statement present inside the system.out.println statement. Next, what we need to understand is we can write any number of constructors inside the class, which means you can have multiple constructors inside the class. So let us write one more constructor, public customer, but the moment I write the same constructor without having any parameter, it is going to raise an error because the signature means method name and the parameter is same. If you want to keep multiple constructors, you need to at least change the parameters. Let me change the parameters like this: int x, string y, and long z. You might think, what are these parameters going to do? What I do is, when I create an object of customer, I will use the customer taking three arguments. There are three parameters. The first one is int, the second is string, the third is long. I use this constructor, and the value whatever these parameters are holding, that value I will assign to the properties. Let me do that. Customer ID equals X, name equals Y, and phone number equals to Z. I will also print one statement called customer with int comma string comma long, so that if I create an object of three parameters constructor, it has to initialize the customer ID, name, and phone number, and should print this statement. Now what you need to do is you need to create an object using this constructor. So what I will do is I have to pass three parameters. The first parameter is int, the second is a string, the third is long. For that reason, you use here double two double three. Name I will keep it as Charles, and let me keep some phone number like 9999 7777 88. What happens now is this customer ID, name, and phone number will be initialized like this. Double two double three is going to be the value of X, which is present in this parameter, and then Charles would be the value of Y, and this phone number is going to be the value of Z. So these three parameters are going to initialize the properties of the object. In that case, the customer ID won't be 0, it will be double two double three. Name is going to be Charles, and phone number is going to be 9999 7777 and 88. But I need to remove this, else it is going to overwrite the values. I have to remove those three statements. Let's see what is the output. If I run this program, observe this constructor is invoked. Because of that, it is printing the statement present in the constructor. And I am creating an object of customer using default constructor. Because of that, it is printing the default constructor system.out.print statement. And I have to initialize the properties of the second object. Then when I invoke the display method, customer one display is printing customer one information, that is Charles. Customer two dot display is printing customer two information, that is Bruce. What you have to observe here is the parameterized constructor is avoiding us to write those three lines of statements. So it means three lines are saved. We can save these three lines also. For that, what I will do is I will just remove it and give some value like 8856 comma David, and some number like 88 888 777 55 6 and 33. Now if I run this program, just a minute, I have to give capital L because it is treated as int. Let me run this program. You can observe David is also printed. It means you can always make use of the parameterized constructor to initialize the variables so that you can avoid writing the initialization statements later. Well, that is it about the constructors. See you in the next video. Thank you.